Welcome back, dear friends, to Highlights on the Book of Action and Reaction. We are coming to the pinnacle, to the height, dare we say, to an end of this book, chapter 20. It is entitled, rightfully so, A Wonderful Surprise, because you will be surprised when you read it. It is moving. Every chapter in this book is moving, and through each chapter and each experience we learn, we gain more and more surprises, not just about the characters, but we could say, or dare we should say, about ourselves, about the law of action and reaction and how it works. But what is most surprising is that the head of Mansalpaz, who is Druso, Instructor Druso, we learn more about who he is, and they begin and they open up this chapter talking about him. But we learn this chapter, Leo, that there's so much hope. And it's a hopeful chapter. It's a chapter that fills our souls and our hearts with hope. And really, he outlines, we would say Andre Luiz outlines a little bit about the character, the nature of who Druso has been these 3 years that they have been studying at Mansalpaz, because that is what they explain in this chapter, that it's been 3 years total. And they talk about his humbleness, his kind gestures, his loving behavior, all throughout every circumstance.
Right. It's interesting because Andre Luiz starts the chapter by saying how difficult it is in Mansalpaz, even though we learn so much from them. They teach us so much, instructors, sealers and all. But the place, as he mentions, many times the place shook on its foundation due to the awesome magnetic convulsions. And we see how hard it is. Imagine ourselves trying to work or try to serve in an environment like this. It's really hard. And what would Druso do? Bring them back and say, let's pray. Let's pray for these other individuals. And as he develops this better explanation about Druso, the instructor, he says the following things, which, it's on page 258. Right on top of page 258, he said, "We never saw him making this smaller gesture that conflicted with his noble and broad authority. He knew how to be firm without being harsh, just without showing favoritism, kind without being weak." That is just a beautiful passage for us to take on in our lives as we close this book, to say, here it is, the ingredients to be a good man, to be a good person, to be a good servant of God.
Right.
So if we can follow these steps, that would be awesome. But there is a reason why Andre Luiz is doing all this. Andre Luiz is bringing all this awesomeness about the instructor.
Right.
And we're not going to give away, because there's much to learn, there's much to read about this chapter and understand the reason why he starts this way. But there are other parts of the book as well that is important for us to touch without giving away the full end of the book, right, Kirsten?
Right. What's interesting is that we have to kind of reference back chapter 9 that's entitled Silas' Story, because we have to remind ourselves, there's been many chapters where he talks about, in chapter 9, not even the behind the scenes, just about the story of Silas. And so before you read this chapter, go back and refresh your mind about Silas' story. It's going to play a role in this particular chapter, because we come to find out who is Druso, who is Silas, and how they play a part. And what's beautiful is that we learn that through their own inner struggles, their own issues that they have, that they put themselves to service, not just for their own problems, to want to solve their problems, because it's an interesting concept. We work to fix our own problems. We're taught about, go inside yourself, figure out who you are, work on your issues. But what they teach us is a new perspective of charity.
Yes.
Much more profound, because we learn, and of course we're not going to give it all away, that Druso and Silas are not unlike us. They're also brothers who were suffering at one point, or somewhere inside of themselves they're still suffering, seeking an opportunity for 50 years. 50 years of solidarity, of charity, of love, of compassion, of working in service because of a particular problem.
It is a particular problem.
So they didn't spend 50 years only just for themselves, but 50 years servicing others at Mansalpaz, alongside the fact of waiting for the very opportunity, which they discuss in this chapter. And they are able to finalize that, and it's beautiful because it is so moving.
It is.
Because who is Druso, after all of this?
And who is Silas?
Silas
Connected with this? How is Silas connected with all this? Right? So it's a question that we pose to one another because we don't want to give it away.
Right.
But it's interesting that you're saying this, Kirsten, as far as our embetterment, or us becoming, better individuals, better spirits, with this capability of, look, in order for you to do that, you're going to be given a chance not only to get that done, but also to work, to serve. And that's what they do. And sometimes we forget in our lives, it's the same thing. Our reincarnation is the same thing. We're getting better as we help others as well, if we want to, if we choose to do so, to help others, to become kind, to extend a hand, and to really exemplify the teachings that we receive with one another. So it's a win-win situation, as we were discussing earlier, that you're given this opportunity and also you're benefiting from it. Definitely, we are the ones who's going to be benefiting from it. And there is a passage that, because going back to the issue, they are individuals just like us, obviously elevated with a much greater sense of the helping, of charity that we learn with them. But there's something inside of them. They're going through this struggle, because there is a passage on page 263 that it says, however, the memory of the injured young woman was a poisonous thorn in their souls. Exemplified that what? Here, that we see that they had something inside of them that they had to rescue, right? They had a situation that they had to rescue. And only through work, through the dedication and selflessness, that they could do so, by serving all those years in Mansão Paz.
Right.
And going back to the point of who were they in the past for them to be in this position right now.
Right.
We talk about sometimes, a little act can put us in such a situation for many, many years.
Right. A small act of selfishness can put us.
Exactly.
Leo, it's so interesting. We wanted to bring something because Joanna DeAndres is always combining modern psychology. It's not even so modern, just psychology in general, in reference to our evolutionary path. There's a very well-known psychologist. His name was Erik Erikson, and he had these developmental stages. And one of the things he says is that whenever we have a trauma in one of those developmental stages, we may physically grow, but emotionally we stay stuck. And in the beginning chapters of the book Existential Complex, Joanna DeAngelis, she actually references in so many words about that very issue. So if we take that idea and the broader perspective of many lifetimes, and if one lifetime I have a trauma or experience where I do something that's incorrect or against the laws of God, I'm sort of a prisoner to that experience until I go back and rectify it. And that is the story of Druso in so many words, without giving it away. It is the story of Silas. It is our story. And life, or God rather, is patiently waiting for us to take the opportunity to rectify situations, to put into practice what Jesus had taught us, which is not easy, because it's a period of time that we need to modify ourselves. But that's why this chapter is so hopeful, because when we come to know who Druso was, who Silas was, we see if they can be that type of person and now become some person who's way better, I know that I too can have faith in becoming somebody better, right?
Yes, it's such a beautiful concept that they're serving us as the guiding model as well, following Jesus' steps as well, as they have mentioned many, many times in this book, the prayers, through referring to the Master, as we do in our lives as well. And sometimes we keep erring, doing the same things that we used to do, but we see here an example, a hopeful example that, look, I can do this. We can be there as well. Yes, we have our troubles, we have our afflictions in our hearts, as Sila mentioned, but we can also rectify these issues, whether it happened in the previous life or in this lifetime, the difficulties that we're facing with our family, with our friends, co-workers, whoever that is, or whatever that is, we have that opportunity. And it's beautiful that in this case, one of the books that we would like to reference to with this teaching is the Gospel According to Spiritism. It's chapter 7, item 11. It's a message by Lacordaire that he talks about humility and pride. And we're going to talk a little bit about it just to exemplify using Druso as an example of humility, that through work he equaled himself many, many times with those who were suffering because he knew he was there at one point. And Lacordaire in this message, which we invite you to read as well, says that humility is a virtue much forgotten among us, calling us to equal ourselves, to make ourselves humble enough to become the same person, a loving, kind individual who were through inserting in society, in our family, throughout our family members. And then he reminds us as well that pride is a terrible adversary of humanity. So there it is. Put the pride aside. Let us be humble. Let us connect with one another in a much more elevated way, helping, knowing that perhaps, if not in this lifetime, if not now, we have been in that ditch before.
And Leo, before we know that you're gonna, we finalize these ideas, there actually is a research that below the screen we will reference a link where people can go and read more about, but there's actually a research that's done in, large companies that are very successful, that a majority of these companies, they have their big bosses actually on the same floor, close to the same floor as the workers, and they have found through research that those companies were more successful because the CEOs of companies were humbling themselves in a sense, even just psychologically, to the other workers, their employees, to make them feel that we're all like a family. And it is through that type of psychology that we begin to learn how to work in a team. At the end of the Law of Progress in the Spirits book, Kardec, in the Spirits, Kardec asked the Spirits this question about, in the future, how will there be just one nation with one religion and one culture? And the Spirits say, no, it's going to be many different nations and many different cultures, but we're all going to respect one another. I honor you as a child of God, and you will honor me, right?
That is correct.
That's what Kardec is talking
exactly
about.
Bringing us together, respecting, just pay that respect to one another, and make ourselves equal in any situation. We are no better, and Jesus did the same to all of us. The question stands still: who is Druso? How is Silas connected with this whole thing, right? One of the things we can also remind is this: let us utilize Druso, Silas, Andre Luiz, Hilario with the question, being the observer, being the kind students that they were, being also the reporters, that if we learn something with someone else, we got to multiply those examples. So let us take these examples in our lives. Let us truly exemplify this in our lives. And just a quick reminder, this is not the last time we're going to meet. There's one more meeting that we'll have together to kind of summarize the whole book, right, Kirsten? Just to make sure that we put everything together.
It'll be a surprise.
It will be a surprise. That is correct. So we hope, again, that this brings, hope to your heart as it brings to us. Please go read it, and we hope that you can find some help with this as well.
Solace, yeah.
Until next time, and may God bless us all.
Many blessings.